Hello, everyone, and welcome to Manitoba Agriculture Crop Talk webinar. If you have any questions during the presentation today, you can type them into the Q&A located on the bottom toolbar of the Zoom screen, and we will answer them at the end of the presentations. This webinar is being recorded, and those registered for Crop Talk will receive a link to the recording. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. I'd like to welcome everybody to this week's edition of Crop Talk. June 11th, we're slowly getting our way halfway through June, and when you get driving around and looking at the crops, you can see that everything seems to be advancing fairly well, and kind of in a response to some of the early seeding that was going on, we're definitely seeing some crops that are advancing fairly quickly. So for today's crop talk, we're going to start with a little bit of a cereal crop outlook. We're going to actually focus the day on cereals. We're going to look at some of the staging for winter wheat and Fusarium, and then maybe a little bit of talk about some of the cereal diseases to watch for. From there, we'll go into the Fusarium head blight risk mapping tool, and Andrew Hector is here from Manitoba Crop Alliance, and he's going to give us an update and kind of a go through of the how to find everything, where it's located, and how it works. It's changed a bit from the last few years that we used to get our Fusarium forecasting. I thought it'd be a good opportunity to go through that and just let everybody know how it works. And then from there, John Gavloski is going to be on, and John's going to talk about some of the cereal insects to watch for over the next little while here as we get farther into the season. And if we have time and if there's questions, we'll have some of the crop scouting panel on, and we'll take some questions. So with that, let's get started. And I guess what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk a little bit about uh, spraying for Fusarium, and the crop that probably is going to be the one that's going to be the one where to watch for right off the start is the winter wheat crop. It's developing well. Most of it is in the pre-heading stage, so in the stage right now where a lot of producers and agronomists will be out in the field checking to see where they are. Some of the fields that got started off early are actually starting to head now, but most of them are still just in the boot, and they're kind of, if you take a look at the plant, they're right there just ready to start poking out of the flag leaf. So probably within the next week to 10 days, we're going to see a lot of that crop start emerging through the head, and that'll be the stage where we need to start watching for the application for control of Fusarium. So just to look at the staging, when depending on weather, that'll determine on the window as to how long we have for an application of fungicide. But as the head starts to come out of the flag leaf, the head actually will start flowering fairly quickly then, and that's where our window kind of starts. And I think the biggest key we need to be watching for when we're determining that stage is the overall stage of the crop. I think a lot of times we maybe get fooled a little bit. We get out there and we go, oh, the heads are there, we need to start spraying. I think the biggest thing you need to start watching for is the head and the flowering. And these two pictures here kind of show the petals of the flowers. And so as the head emerges, the glooms are open, and the head is flowering. And as the flower or the glooms close and the flowers are done, the gloom will close, and you'll see petals hanging off the head like these pictures are. So the head, it'll flower from the middle and it'll go up and downwards. So it's you'll see flowers usually starting at the middle of the head, and then work their way up and down up and down the head. So as the glooms close, you see the petals hanging, and what you want to do is you want to kind of time your field so the majority of the heads are just starting to see the flowers, the petals like they are in this image here. Because that means the glooms are starting to close. You want to spray before all those glooms are closed and get the fungicide on there. And that's where you'll get your best control of Fusarium. So flowering, I mentioned at the beginning, is dependent on weather. So a lot of times, if we have good moist growing conditions and it doesn't get overly hot, your plants will flower for a longer period of time. If we do get dry conditions and lots of heat, your heads will not flower as long, and you'll see a lot of the flowering happening within a day or so. So that's the window we need to be watching for. So scouting your fields is going to be pretty important, right? Right about maybe next 5 or 6 days as we get out into the fields, is to start watching and determining the staging as you want to spray. Now, with a lot of our products now, we have a little better window for spraying. Some of them are a little better at getting control. So that window maybe is a little bit bigger than it used to be when we only had 1 or 2 products that were good for spraying. But again, timing is where you're going to get your best bang for your buck. So make sure you're at that stage where the plant is flowering and is still available to take in a lot of that fungicide. Another couple of things regarding spraying, water volumes and your nozzles are important, and I think that's where you need to be talking to your dealers and your chem reps as to what their recommendations are. But coverage is what you want to get. You want to get good coverage across the crop. You want to get good coverage both front and back of the head. That's why nozzles are important. And so that's another thing to be getting ready for as we get ready for spraying here. The other thing, I guess, that I wanted to mention while we are talking a little bit about disease and taking care of the crop, cereal crops, probably the biggest things we're always looking for disease on cereal crops is tan spots, septoria. And as you can see in the picture here, the black spot with the yellow halo around it, that's your tan spot. And as that gets bigger, it starts to take over more of the leaf. One of the things I guess I always talk to producers about is be checking your fields now, and in case you have an issue that you can maybe take care of while you're spraying your herbicides, and if you have a field that's showing lots of disease. We've been pretty lucky over the last few years. We haven't really had a lot of issues with the younger crop. The 4 to 5 leaf and tillering crop is growing fairly fast, and those plants are able to outgrow a lot of the disease issues unless there's been a problem or unless it's a bad rotation, and you need to be watching for. But in the past few years, or this year, I'm seeing it especially, the crop is growing really fast. So we're probably not going to need to be worrying about disease in young crop. And then when we get into the older or the more mature crop, a lot of times what we'll see then is we're more concerned about our application for Fusarium. But the good thing about all the products that we're using nowadays, they're good for controlling a lot of the other leaf disease issues that are out there as well. And so we can go ahead and get double bang for our money. We're getting control of Fusarium, and we're also getting control of any of the leaf diseases that might be affecting the flag leaf and the leaf below the flag leaf, because those are the 2 leaves that are important for us to make sure we're on top of when we're worried about leaf diseases. And like I mentioned, usually when we're spraying for Fusarium, we're able to cover that off with the application of fungicide for Fusarium. So just a brief kind of overview of a couple of the diseases we need to be watching for in Fusarium timing. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Andrew now. And Andrew's going to give us an update on the Fusarium head blight forecasting tool. And as I mentioned, Andrew's an agronomist extension specialist with Manitoba Crop Alliance. So Andrew, if you want to grab the screen and you can start walking us through the forecasting tool.
Okay, hi everyone. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, just go to presenter mode. Perfect.
Looks good. Okay, awesome. So good morning, everyone. As Lionel mentioned, winter wheat is about to be heading, or some are actively heading. So it's time to start talking about using the, I say, relatively new FHB risk mapping tool. This tool was released in 2024, so just last year, and is actually also discussed on CropTalk. Today, I'm going to do a quick overview of where to find this tool and how to navigate the webpage if you aren't already familiar with it or haven't used it before. But first I want to take a look back and take a step back to what maps were previously available. So in previous years, including 2023, the FHB risk map for Manitoba was hosted on the Manitoba Agriculture on a Manitoba Agriculture webpage. The risk maps were updated on weekdays, once daily, but not on weekends. This usually left a gap in time during weekends where no map updates were occurring, and multiple would be posted the following Monday. The maps were static for the most part. They looked quite similar to other maps that Manitoba Agriculture produces. So they had most of the major centers, but you weren't able to really zoom in onto specific parts of the map. But there was also a second map that showcased a GIF. So it showcased how the FHB risk changed over a previous 7-day period. I believe it was 7 days, but so it showed you how it changed over time. So the models that were used to create these prior risk maps, were originally developed in the United States, and then they were adapted for the Canadian prairies. The models were over 20 years old. Some questions were coming about its accuracy and just the need for updating it with the change of weather patterns and such. So these risk maps too were only applicable to spring wheat and to winter wheat to some extent, especially for winter wheat because they're produced so early. They could be used, but they were not directly developed for barley or durum as well. So that was the impotence for creating a new FHB risk maps and models, and then subsequent risk mapping tool. So the new risk mapping tool was released in 2024, so a year ago. The models used to create the FHB risk maps were developed using Canadian prairie data stemming from a research project headed by Dr. Paul Bullock from the University of Manitoba. The original research or the project took place between 2018 and 2023, and the data was actually gathered from over 1,800 plots that were spread across the prairies. And then there is a second independent data set where we collected from over 300 producer fields across the prairies that the models were then validated on. So it's very much a Western Canadian prairie made models and risk mapping tool. The risk maps, one positive is now that they are applicable across the whole prairie. So previously, the models for each province were slightly different. So you could be getting different risk levels depending on the province. So between Manitoba and Saskatchewan, especially on those borders, if you're farming those borders, that's where some issues started to rise, or maybe some confusion. So with this new risk mapping tool, and these models are now used across the prairie provinces. So they're kind of unified in that sense. The models also, there's now models that were also developed for multiple crop types. So including spring wheat, winter wheat, but also now barley and durum. The risk model algorithms were developed independently for each crop type and were selected based off of their individual statistical accuracy. The different models, or each algorithm, uses a different weather parameters as well. So the risk levels determined at a given location at a given day can actually vary between the models. The risk mapping tool that then came along with it has also improved, and I think it's a benefit to all growers and users of it, because it's much more interactive and exportable. So the tool allows users to like zoom in into a specific region, choose dates, choose crop types, and export the maps. So it makes it more specific and almost tunable to the choices of the user. The maps used, or the weather data is collected from, this is specifically for the Manitoba portion, is collected from the Manitoba Ag Weather Station Network and also some Environment Canada stations. So it's in Manitoba, over 130 weather stations or so from the last update I've heard. I'm going to do a quick run through, like a live demonstration of how to use the new viewer tool, but there have been some changes on how to find this tool. So first I want to show you where it can be found. So as mentioned before, the previous maps were found on the Manitoba Ag website. So that's where, and last year there's actually screenshots taken of this new tool and posted there, I believe is weekly. This year, though, I'm notified that those screenshots won't be posted onto this webpage that you're seeing here. Rather, you'll have to access the forecasting tool through that link, or so if you have this bookmarked, just know that's where you have to go, or you can bookmark the new tool once you get there as well, because clicking that will take you to the FHB landing page. So I'm going to start, I'm going to show this, or show a live demonstration here. Let's go like this. So can you still see my screen?
Yep, good to go.
Okay, so here's that landing page that I was discussing. So you just click on the prairiefhb.ca. That'll take you to the landing page here. So on this side, at this part, it gives you links to like the weekly crop reports for all 3 provinces, frequently asked questions, as well. It gives definitions of the FHB risk parameters, and then where the weather data is also coming from. So just knowing where a lot of this is collected. Then you can just go to use the FHB risk map mapping tool right here. Then there's this pop-up text box that appears when you first enter. This is just stating that the risk maps are based on models and that no models are 100% accurate. So that therefore this map needs to be used in tandem with traditional scouting methods to determine FHB risk for individual fields. Also specifically determine if the environmental conditions match what's on the risk map, and also match post-crop susceptibility timing, as these risk maps are only giving you information on one part of that disease triangle, the environmental conditions, that if they're favorable for the development of FHB. So if you are assuming you want to move forward with this, you select just accept here. Then you're at this map of Canada here, and you can go closer into the prairies. And you start on the left-hand side of the page, select a date. So we'll go with June 11th. The date this tool runs or calculates FHB risk between May 15th and I believe August 31st. So we'll go with June 11th. The crop type we'll go with is winter wheat. So then we select our variety. So variety here, we'll select wildfire, and the risk parameter, I'll select this Fusarium head blight. And province, as we're in Manitoba, I'll just select Manitoba. So then I click show results. So this is showing for today the Fusarium head blight risk. So you can see the legend here. So low, moderate, high in red, and then this gray right here, that's considered a very high risk. So a few other aspects of this is that, which is new from even last year, are that there is a kind of a similar tool to that that we saw on the Manitoba webpage, but this gives you a time lapse of how the risk has changed over the last few days. So you can stop it at any point. You're able to also, if you want to know where the weather stations are, click right here and you'll see weather stations. And you can zoom in right there, zoom in to where you'd like to see. And then if you want to then export this map, there's an export button right here. So it'll take you to this. It'll export the map portion that you selected. And when you export the map, it'll come with the date, the crop type, variety, the Fusarium head blight, or the risk. So it will basically the whole image that is downloaded is this whole page. So we go back here. So that is just a quick overview of how this tool works. So I'll be around if you have any questions later. Thanks.
Okay, Andrew, there's a question that came in. It says it's not showing results for me.
It's not showing.
So I guess somebody must be trying to use it, and it's maybe if you could just, maybe they missed something. If you could just quickly.
Yeah. So for date, crop type, sometimes this happens if the variety isn't selected. I've had that happen to me before. That I've forgot to select the variety. But once the variety is selected and the risk is selected, and then select the province, or you could go view all, which will give you a prairie-wide view. You can press show results, and then it should pop up across for whatever you selected there.
Okay,
I
think that. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I can start again, or you can shoot me an email later too, and I can.
Okay. I think the key is to make sure you've gone through each of those things, because if you miss one of them, you won't get any results, right?
Exactly, and it should. And if so, let's say if I'll clear these, and I'll start again. So I'll have a date. Crop type will already be selected here, but variety won't be selected. So if I don't select variety, it'll come up like this, and then a please add variety to see results will pop up like an error message of sorts. So if there's something wrong happening in terms of the selection here, the selection process, it should pop up to say which aspect you're missing.
Okay, and before you leave, if you could give us your email address, and then in case somebody has questions, they can give you a call or a text?
Yeah, for sure. My email is andrew at mbcropalliance.ca. And
Okay.
so if this FHB map can be found at the prairiefhb.ca right here. If you type that into Google or any search engine, you'll also find it.
Okay. And another question has come in. Could you please explain the differences between the three risk categories in practical terms for producers and what they should keep in mind? So I
Yeah,
guess
so
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you.
I was going to say the risk categories. So for the crop types, there's only, so for winter wheat and barley, they actually only have the Fusarium head blight, and that is this Fusarium head blight index actually is what it's relating to. So those are visual symptoms when they're doing this experiment, when they're doing this research project. They're relating this to visual symptoms they saw in the field. So for like I said, winter wheat and barley, you don't have at this point. They don't have models developed for Fusarium damaged kernel or dawn. So there's only one choice there. Fusarium damaged kernel and dawn were both determined in the lab. So there's different models were constructed in terms of how these models relate those risk parameters.
Okay. And can you use this to forecast future dates? Like, so today's Wednesday. Can you go say on that date and put in Friday? Would they give you an estimate of what's happening by then?
Do you know what? At this point, that is this tool does not have that functionality. I believe that is something that the researchers have thought of, and depending on a lot of different aspects, would like to add to it, but it's not available currently.
Okay. Well, I think that's answered all of the questions that have come in so far. I'm not sure if you're available, Andrew, but if you could hang on for the rest of the webinar or crop talk, then if there's any questions that come in, we can maybe address them later. Oh, just a second. I think something just come in now. Okay, so the Fusarium head blight risk is what producers can use to keep in mind for spraying decisions, but the other risk which would show producers potential risks for other categories later in the year.
Yeah, so the Fusarium damaged kernels again would look at the model was developed to look at that risk factor. So when thinking about risk, I think you have to look at all of these in tandem if you're making like if you're thinking about making a spray decision along with like your traditional scouting methods.
Yeah, so probably if your risk is high, then the other two factors would probably come more into play then, like your damaged kernels and is that kind of what they're getting at?
I believe so, but they are again. It's not all of these are available
Right.
um, for each crop type. Hopefully, with this project, they're continuing on with it to hopefully gather more information, and maybe in the future these risks will be rolled out for all crop types. But at this point, the risks are there's only one for winter wheat and barley, and then spring wheat has both Fusarium damaged kernels and FHB.
Okay, and they just said thanks. They had some questions on this last year from producers. So I think it's like you had mentioned, it's kind of like a tool that's being developed as we go, and as more stuff comes available, I think it'll probably be updated on the website, I guess, right?
Yes, from my understanding.
Okay, well, thanks, Andrew. Again, if you could hold on in case we get some questions later on, that would be great. And I think what we'll do now is we'll turn it over to John, and we'll look at some potential insects we should be looking for or watching out for the coming for cereal crops this coming season.
Okay, I'll just get my slideshow up here, Lionel. Okay, you can see the slides, Lionel?
Yes, can.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'm just going to cover a couple, I guess, small grain and forage grass insects that people might be seeing, just as a heads up. Not that we've had any issues with them to this point, but this is more just a refresher into things to look for. And so the first one I'll cover is armyworm, or sometimes we call this true armyworm. Sometimes when we use the term armyworm, people automatically think Bertha armyworm. This one's different. This is true armyworm. It doesn't overwinter here like Bertha armyworm does. They overwinter quite far south, and they do have a purposeful migration north every year, and that can be wind assisted. Whether we get many of them and where they end up is somewhat weather dependent, and depending on their populations down south and their migration. So some years we get lots moving in, other years not too many, and some years is very regional. So something to just keep an eye out for. On the upper left in your screen, that is the adult, and on the wings you can see in the photo a very small white dot on the light brown wings, and that's one of the distinctive features of true armyworm. If they have all their scales, that's easy to see. If they've been in a trap fluttering around for a while, sometimes they lose scales, and that's not as easy to see. The larvae, they can be various colors. They've got a very distinctive striping pattern along the side of their body, but the overall color can really vary from quite light to almost black, but they will have a series of white, orangey, and darker stripes along the side. And the lower right, that's the pupa stage. When they do move in, they prefer to look for grassy plants, things in the often it's the winter cereals that they go to first, and the forage grasses. They like a thick, dense grass stand to lay eggs into. So winter wheat, fall rye, forage grasses are ideal. They will lay eggs into other grassy plants. They very rarely will lay eggs into broadleaf plants. They will feed on broadleaf plants, but that's usually a secondary thing. Usually, initially when they move in, again, they're looking for those thick, grassy stands to lay eggs into. So forage grasses, winter cereals, that's where they usually start out. We do get a second generation of them later in the summer. And if they've done a lot of damage to, say, a fall rye field or a forage grass field, they will start moving to a neighboring field if they've done a lot of damage to, say, a forage grass or winter cereal. That's why they call them armyworms, because of that army-like movement from crop to crop. But as caterpillars, they can't move far. They can only go really across the road. That's the odd time when we will see them in things like soybeans, canola, peas, things like that. But usually that's secondarily after they've been feeding in our cereal crops. And we do put up traps for them. We have roughly 50 traps up for armyworms across the province right now. So we're trying to figure out roughly how many have moved in, and where in the province are we seeing any higher counts. We haven't had any counts that I would say are alarmingly high at this point. We've had a couple, I'll call them more moderate counts in the Interlake. So around Fisher Branch and Riverton, we had counts that went slightly over 50. But aside from that, most of the counts so far have been quite low. So at this point, we're not really, well, a lot can happen. We're not really predicting big levels. But that being said, I still encourage people, scout your cereals. And when you are scouting the cereals and forage grasses during the day, look on the ground underneath stubble and debris, because that's where you're going to find the older larvae hanging out there. After they get through their first couple stages, they become a nocturnal larva that just feeds at night and hangs out underneath anything they can crawl under, whether it's debris, a clump of soil, something like that. Particularly if you see notching or feeding on plants that you're having trouble explaining, look under the debris or the stubble and see if potentially armyworms are what's causing the issue. Another one I wanted to touch on in cereals is cereal leaf beetle. And this is something that we really haven't had a lot of serious issues with in Manitoba. And I'll explain the reason why in just a minute. But what you often end up seeing is the very distinctive feeding from either the adults or larvae of this insect. When the adults feed, they tend to feed right through the cereal leaves. And once again, this is on cereals and forage grasses. They won't go on to broadleaf plants. There's a number of grassy plants they will feed on, but strictly cereals and forage grasses where we'd have to really worry about them. But again, they haven't done a lot of serious damage here. The adults will make these long, thin lines in the leaves. They will chew right through the leaf and make these long streaks or holes in the leaves. So that's the adult feeding. And the adult itself is not that big. They're only about 6 millimeters, so they're a quite tiny beetle. The slides always make them look big, but they are a very tiny beetle, black with this more orangey red middle section, the thorax and the legs, and the head is black. So tiny, black with orange middle, and making long slits in the leaves. That would be cereal leaf beetle, the adult stage. And here's the larvae and the feeding they do. So the adults made the long slits in the leaves. The larvae, when they feed, they're not feeding right through the leaf. They're making these white streaks on the leaf. And this is a bit higher damage level. We usually don't see it quite like this, but it can get there. But yeah, they will make these long white streaks in the leaves. The larva on the right looks quite yellow. The one on the left, less so. It looks more brown. The reason being, the larvae make themselves something called a fecal shield, and which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a shield made of feces. They basically cover themselves in their own poop so that they are less desirable for things that might want to feed on them. So that's why the one on the right, I had scraped off the fecal shield to get a picture of what the actual larva looked like. And the one on the left was the before picture. So That's cereal leaf beetle larvae. Now, they're not an insect that belongs in North America. They were accidentally introduced back in the 60s was when they were first reported. That was in Michigan. In Western Canada, they were first found in Alberta in 2005. By 2008, they had moved into just the southwest corner of Saskatchewan. So at that time, I really wasn't expecting them in Manitoba anytime soon. But surprise, surprise, 2009, they were found in the northwest part of Manitoba. Being that it was a really big range expansion, that's not likely natural, that's likely human assisted, and there's many ways that could happen. It could be something as simple as somebody moving bales of hay, somebody going to a country fair with their livestock and cleaning out all the straw and dumping it. It's really hard to know, but anyway, likely human assisted. We've had it since 2009, and we've since then seen it spread really across the cereal growing part of the province. However, a good news story here. In 2009, when it was first found in the Northwest, a contact of mine in Alberta, Lloyd Dosdell at the time, Alberta was doing a biocontrol program for their cereal leaf beetles. I contacted Lloyd and a few other people in Alberta, and they were able to send a parasitic wasp called Tetrastichus julis. And we got them released right away. And for several years after 2009, we were tracking the range of cereal leaf beetle, where it was expanding to, and we were getting parasitoid releases done in those areas. And as a result, levels never really did explode. In fact, our parasitism levels, when we have dissected larvae to see what the level of parasitism is, quite high percentages were being parasitized by this wasp. The wasp is really good at finding cereal leaf beetle. That fecal shield gives off some chemical cues that the wasp adults will use to track where the larvae are, and they lay their eggs into them. And sometimes you will find multiple Tetrastichus julis larvae inside a cereal leaf beetle. And there were times when we were looking at parasitism rates of at least 40 to 60% range from some areas. So the parasitoid has taken off. It's doing a good job. And that's why we encourage people, scout your fields and know what's going on, but don't panic spray if you are seeing just a little bit of feeding from cereal leaf beetle, because they do have the good guys that are helping keep them in check. And I thought I would just wrap up by talking a little bit more about pea leaf weevil, just because people are seeing a lot of the notching on the pea leaves this year, and it's raised a lot of questions. As I mentioned in last week's Crop Talk, trying to control the adults probably won't get you too far. You can certainly get good kill of the adults, but by the time you are seeing a lot of notching, you've probably already had a lot of eggs laid, and the adults really aren't the issue, unless you had a very, very severe notching combined with drought. And even then, there would have to be literally hundreds of notches per seedling. The adult feeding generally is not of significance. It's the larva feeding on the nodules on the roots. That's what the issue is. If you have too many larvae feeding on the nodules, you get reduced nodules and reduced nitrogen fixation, thus nitrogen deficient pea plants or faba bean plants. They like faba beans as well. That's the issue. One of the questions Lionel said he was getting was, can you pull up the roots later on and look at nodules or look for larvae? Yes, you can. If you were to pull up and dig around the roots, you could have a look. However, do note the larvae, fully grown, are maybe 4 or 5 millimeters long. They are tiny. So you're looking for a tiny legless beetle larva. So it will have the head capsule and things that your beetle larva would have. So fly larvae usually don't have a head capsule like this. Beetle larvae will. Often a lot of beetle larvae do have legs, but weevils are different. A lot of the weevil larvae don't have any legs. So they might seem somewhat maggot-like, but again, head capsule. So not fly or diptera. It's and without legs, you can pretty much rule out the Lepidoptera, your caterpillars and things. So with a little bit of practice, you can get to know what weevil larvae look like and have a look for them. And also the nodules on the plant. You can have a look and see if you do have nodules or nodules that are being damaged on the plant. So maybe I'll wrap up with that, Lionel, and if there's any questions, I can take them.
Yeah, John, there's a few questions that have come in. First one is, how long will the pea leaf weevil still be feeding? Still seeing lots of damage happening in the field.
Yeah, the pea leaf weevil feeding from the adults should be wrapping up fairly soon. They overwinter as adults, so May and early June is normally when they come out and do their feeding. Once we get into later June and July, you're not really seeing the adults so much. Then you're at the stage where it's larvae feeding on plants. So I would say you probably can find the beetles and the weevils another week, maybe 2 weeks best. But numbers will be going down. It's kind of like flea beetles. There's no sudden point where you're not seeing them. They just gradually will start diminishing. And that would already be happening, that gradual decline in the adult numbers. Again, within a week or two, I would expect numbers to be getting quite low to the point where you're just not seeing a lot of the adult weevils anymore.
Okay, and I was actually out in the field yesterday, and it seemed like the upper leaves were. I was seeing less damage, anyways, are not as easy to find. Anyways.
Yeah, once the plants, the seedlings are starting to grow quite well right now, and they're going to outgrow a lot of that notching that you've seen, and that notching will start to become much less visible. When you've only got 2 or 3 nodes and you've got a fair amount of notching, it really stands out. But as the plant grows, produces more nodules, and as the adult weevils decline, that'll become less and less visible.
Okay, I got a question here regarding flea beetles, John. So producer says he's got flea beetles in his canola, and what if my 4-leaf canola, the 3rd and 4th leaves are only cotyledon size because of previous flea beetle feeding? What is the expected yield loss, and should I be spraying again?
I would still suggest using that 25% threshold that we use, but also keep in mind what the flea beetle population is that you're currently seeing and the weather for your area as well. In some areas, we may be starting to see some of the decline in flea beetle numbers as well. So that could factor into the decision making. But if you're still seeing a lot on the plants, 3 to 4 leaf stage, there can be exceptions. We usually suggest once you get to 3 to 4 leaf stage, the plants can tolerate the feeding and you're starting to get out of the woods. But there can be exceptions to that. Under very heavy flea beetle pressure, there are times when spraying at 3 to 4 leaf stage could still be economical. So yeah, keep an eye on things. Consider also, like I said, what the flea beetle population is. Warm, calm and not too humid days are really ideal for their feeding. So again, regional weather forecasts this week's going to be a little bit cooler, but we could have some very good flea beetle feeding days, even in the low 20s. If it's a nice calm day, the ones that are present will be out on the plants. You should be able to get a good idea what the levels are like and how well the plants are doing. And the other thing to factor in, of course, is growing conditions. Under drier conditions, the plants aren't going to compensate as well as they will if it's moister soil. So these are all the things you have to factor in. And I always suggest that flea beetles are one of the trickier things we have to scout for, because as much as we do have an economic threshold, it's not always clean cut. And there's all these other things that we often have to factor in with our decision making.
Okay, and another question on the pea leaf weevil. Is it too early now to see nodule damage?
I wouldn't say it's too early, because the adults have been out for a while, eggs have been laid, and there definitely could be larvae starting to feed on the plants. That will just increase over the next few weeks. Short answer, you may see some small larvae and possibly the start of feeding to the nodules at this point.
Okay, and the next question I think is going to be for me, and the question is, should I spray my wheat at flag leaf stage for leaf disease or wait until heading time? And what I would say there is, again, you need to check your field to see if you have much leaf damage, but got to remember that if the flag leaf and the leaf below the flag leaf is probably your more important leaves. So if you don't have much damage on those leaves or much disease on those leaves, I would wait till my Fusarium timing and spray Fusarium for when you spray for Fusarium and get your control then. And one more question for Andrew, and somebody is just to clarify, on the Saskatchewan side, it's entirely pulling weather data from Environment Canada.
For that, currently on the Saskatchewan side, they use a patchwork of Environment Canada stations, but also private weather stations on they're trying to increase the amount that are on there to have a better distribution, but it's a combination of Environment Canada and also private weather stations.
So those would be like the Farmer's Edge type ones, or
it's through Meadows weather stations right now.
Meadows, yeah. Okay, well, that's good information.
And farmers there have to give permission for it to be then used for this FHB risk mapping tool.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Okay, we've got a bit of time here yet, and I'm going to go through some of the crop report that had just come out. Mentioned at the beginning that fall rye was heading out, and this was a picture taken yesterday of a field of fall rye that is looking actually really good and heading out, and you can see flowering. So actually some of them might be even getting past the point of flowering, and so doing really well. Where we're sitting at seeding, 99% complete right now. I would say the only fields that need to be done yet might be some reseeding and might be some green feed maybe, but I think the amount is pretty much 100% done. Winter wheat and fall rye mentioned, and that they're doing really well, and winter wheat's going to be heading out. Fall rye is definitely going. Earliest seeded spring and wheat fields are at the beginning of stem elongation, majority at the 4 to 5 leaf and tillering. A lot of spraying happening this past couple days with weather situations. Good for spraying. Crops are filling out and starting to fill in the rows really good. Oats and barley, 3 to 5 leaf stage and tillering. So it's moving along fairly well. And the majority of the corn is in the V2 to V4 leaf stage. Peas are doing good. They're anywhere from 4 to 7 nodes. And like I mentioned when I was talking with John there, that I've seen some peas that not seeing as bad of feeding on the top as there was on the bottom pods, but John made sense by saying that a lot of those plants are getting bigger now, so the damage isn't quite noticeable. This one was in the 6 node stage already, so advancing well. A lot of peas have already been sprayed, and moving along well. Soybeans, most areas are up, varying from this picture would be the unifoliates. So the first trifoliates are coming out to, anywhere to the, second to third, and maybe some of the early seeded fields. Some reports of iron deficiency chlorosis is present in some fields. And again, that's something that the plants usually grow out of and it usually doesn't get too severe. Canola ranges from, emerging, which a lot of the fields that were sown last week, they're starting to come up now. This rain that we got definitely is going to make a difference for them. A lot of the earlier canola is cabbaging out and is going to start covering the ground soon. This stuff would be in the 4 to 5 leaf stage already. As mentioned, there's still some flea beetle feeding, so definitely keep an eye on some of the later seeded fields just to make sure that they're coming up and getting through any damage fast. We been dealing with the questions as they've been coming in today, so we don't have anything for the crop scouting panel right now. Mention about the crop diagnostic school, July 3rd, 8th, 9th, and 10th. So if you're interested in going to that this year, there is the email address. They need some information, your name, phone number of people attending, the day you wish to attend, and they will let you know if there's still space available for those days, and then you'll be invoiced. Farmer Day is July the 4th. So for farmers that contribute to MCA, Manitoba Pulse Growers, Manitoba Canola Growers, you will have free admission. If you're a non-member, producer that's a non-member, it'll only cost you $75. The contact information for the crop extension specialist in the province is there, as well as their phone numbers. And again, if you're interested in any of the disease surveys coming up, contact one of us and we can definitely fit you in. Our livestock and forage people in the province been doing some driving last couple of days. Forages after this rain have definitely jumped. The alfalfa is looking good. We got some first cut happening in some parts of the province, but definitely has improved. A lot of cattle have been gone to pasture already. So if you have any questions for these people, please contact them. Our MASC service centers, there's their locations and their numbers. Seeding deadlines. This coming week, we're going to probably blow by a lot of those seeding deadlines. So if you still haven't got your crop in, maybe just double check with the offices to see if some of the crops you're still planning on growing are still eligible for full coverage. June 12th, so tomorrow, for livestock price insurance. Make sure if you're interested in that you look into that today. And if you have any questions, there's my number, my email address, Lori's email address, and like to thank the presenters today. I would also like you to join us next week, June the 18th, for our next edition of Crop Talk. Thanks for attending.